In this video, I want to talk a little bit about New York State's requirement to adopt an operating agreement for your limited liability company. So in this series of videos, I've been talking a lot about forming a limited liability company in the state of New York, what the requirements are, what the fees are, what some of the minor issues or things you want to look out for are. In this video, I want to talk about the requirement for you to adopt an operating agreement. So an operating agreement is pretty simple. It's a document that allows you to protect your limited liability status, and it allows you to structure your financial and working relationships with the co-owners of the LLC, as well as some other things. So I'm going to go over some of those things. Number one thing it does is it really, it's a requirement. So that's number one, right? Let's get that straight. The New York State law requires that you have a written operating agreement. The second thing an operating agreement does is it protects your limited liability status. So there is a status that says, no one's liable. There's default rules that are given to a corporation a limited liability company by the state. But those default rules can be overridden by your operating agreement. So for example, the main reason most people create a limited liability agreement or a limited liability company is because they don't want the liability, right? This is why the whole point of limited liability company. They don't want the liability personally. So in an operating agreement, you reiterate that, right? And I know it's said in the actual title of the company, LLC or limited liability company, but in the operating agreement, you reiterate that and it helps guard you from liability. So if in your operating agreement says no members or no executives will be legally liable for any actions pertaining on behalf of the liability, as long as you guys don't pierce the corporate shield, which I went over that in a last video, one of my other videos, excuse me, that will help you, again, further limit your liability. So it does that. And one of the other things it does is it helps define your financial and management structure. So in the operating, again, there's a status quo default rules that the state will give you, but this will tell you in the operating agreement, you can put how many board members you want, how many executives you want, how much should they get paid, what are their rights when it comes to handling money? Can they write checks for over 50,000? Can they not write checks for? There's all these criteria that you can put in there. America's great because it gives you the freedom to create your own business and really your own rules for business, as long as you're not talking about anything illegal. It gives you your own rules to structure the business how you want. So this is one of the beauties of the operating agreement. It really further defines that, so you don't go into my next point, which is the operating agreement overrides state default rules. So there's a bunch of these state default rules that say, you have to have a majority. Let's give an example. Some states say you have to have a majority vote of all the members to do anything that materially affects the business, right? This could say you don't need a majority vote. Only the executive, the managing member, has 100% authority. Or you need a 30% vote, right? Because there's so many members, you only want 30% vote to do anything major. So it overrides these state default rules, which aren't a big deal at the inception, but quickly become a big deal, because if there's a discrepancy between, let's say you got 100 members in your LLC, or even 10, and there's a disagreement, now we go to the state rules if you don't have an operating agreement. So you want an operating agreement to override those state rules. What should you include in the operating agreement? So some of the things you want to include are the percentage interest in the LLC, every member's percentage interest in the LLC, the rights and responsibilities of certain members or managing members, voting powers and percentage of voting powers. So what kind of voting powers, the degree of voting powers, and then how much percentage they all have. How profits and losses are allocated can be determined in an operating agreement. So just because me and you formed an LLC together doesn't mean we're 50-50 if we don't write that, if we write something different in the operating agreement. For example, it could say you put up $10,000, so you are responsible for 50% of the profits, but I'm responsible for 100% of the losses or expenses, right? So you can literally in an operating agreement decide how the profits and losses will be allocated, or even the expenses will be allocated. How the LLC will be managed. That's another thing, right? It could say that we're going to be managed by 3 people. It could say that all the management goes into this person's hand, and the other person is a limited member, meaning that they have no say in the outcome of the management activities, but they do have an allocation of profits or revenues or equity in the business, whatever it may be. Rules for holding meetings and taking notes are another thing you want in the operating agreement. Clauses for buyouts and sellout provisions. This is one of the biggest ones, right? When can I buy you out? How much can I buy you out for? What triggers that? Percentages of ownership are another one. Distributive shares. So like again, back to the distribution of losses and profits. I can say that, look, we're going to distribute profits 65, 35 my way, right? So I get 65% of the profits, you get 35% of profits. But if there's a loss because you're a doctor, make $1 billion a year or a couple $1 million a year, if there's a loss in the company, you're going to get the loss. You can offset it on your taxes, right? You can do that in an LLC. So distributive shares. And again, so those are just a few of the things. I just wanted to cover some basics here. I don't like to make my videos too long. I like to give you as much value as I can. Again, my name is Nick. I went to business school, went to law school, graduated both, worked on Wall Street, and now I help entrepreneurs, executives, public companies, private companies manage marketing effects, business planning, marketing planning. But more importantly, in terms of this video, I help them form their LLCs in the state of New York. So if you need an LLC formed in the state of New York, reach out to me. You can find me at nicholascoriano.com or in the information I put below. If you think this video is going to help anybody, share it with them, tag them in the comments section or email it to them, or subscribe to my page for more videos like this. Hope you guys are having a great day. Keep rocking. Catch me on the next video.